Hi everyone, I'm Caleb. I'm also the Star Wars Crusader, and as of the recording and hopefully of the posting of this video, it's May the 4th, Star Wars Day, and I freaking love Star Wars. This isn't even everything. This is just everything I could fit on this shelf. I need to get another shelf. In order to fit everything and probably to get more stuff. I love Star Wars. And so I wanted to put out a video talking about this day in honor of my favorite franchise. And so I thought today I would talk about my favorite Star Wars character, who I believe is one of the best Star Wars characters, and quite possibly the most misunderstood Star Wars character, Boba Fett. Now, Boba Fett gets a bad rap because in the movies, he's only in like 3 of them. No one likes Attack of the Clones. And then in Empire and Return of the Jedi, he only gets 5 lines. He's got a cool costume, and he has a really lame death. And that's really all people know about him. And so I wanted to come to the defense of Boba Fett. Boba Fett, in the books, in all the expanded material, is fascinating. He's not evil. Like, he's just kind of like this one-dimensional bad guy in the movies. He kidnaps Han. But there's a reason that he's after Han. He and Han have this fuming feud that, eventually ends, and we'll get to that. But there are a couple of stories that I want to go through just to give you some perspective on why Boba Fett is one of the coolest and my favorite Star Wars character. First thing is a comic book series called, I believe it's called Boba Fett is Dead. Now this details stuff that happens after the Clone Wars, after his father has died, after he was trained as a bounty hunter. He goes to Concord Dawn under the name Jaster Muriel. Now, Jaster Muriel was the one who found Jango Fett and took him under his wing. And so Jango wanted to do that himself. That's why he asked for one clone that was unaltered. He wanted his own version of himself. He wanted to preserve his legacy through Boba. And so Boba takes the name Jaster Muriel, goes to Concord Dawn. Now, Concord Dawn is where the Mandalorians lived at that point. This, I believe, may have been before Mandalore was ever a thing. Honestly, I can't remember. There's with Legends and canon, it all kind of gets mixed up. For the most part, most of Boba's stuff kind of fits both into Legends and into canon. But whenever Boba was 16, he meets a woman. I believe her name was Sinsta. And he falls in love with her. He even says, growing up, I only ever knew Kaminoan females, and so this Mandalorian woman is the first one he ever met. But she was 18 at the time. They get married and they have a kid. Now, he goes on to become a journeyman and a protector of Concord Dawn, but his the one who's in command of him takes advantage of his wife, and that kind of puts a strain on their relationship. Boba actually kills his his commanding officer, and when the person comes to plead him, he even says all he has to do is show sorrow for murdering his commanding officer, and everything will be all right. But Boba says he doesn't feel sorry. He deserved it, and he is sorry that he didn't do it a year before. And so then Boba is exiled. Boba then goes to the Imperial Academy to be a stormtrooper. But that doesn't work out. He's kind of a loner, so he goes on to go back to what he's good at. He's a bounty hunter. He doesn't join the Bounty Hunters Guild. He is a freelance. And so he eventually does join the guild because that's what the Empire paid him to do, was to join the guild and kind of tear it down from the inside at the behest of Lord Shizor. Now, the reason that I find this fascinating is because we always thought Boba was a freelance bounty hunter, but in reality, he was working for the Empire the whole time. And now I want to skip ahead to Jabba's palace, because a very important thing happens at Jabba's palace right before Luke shows up, actually. Boba's waiting in his quarters, and now the reason that he's at Jabba's palace is because he's waiting for Luke, because he's going to take Luke as a bounty to Darth Vader, and then he's done. It's the classic last job. Of course, probably not. But he gets a knock on his door. 2 guards say, "This is a gift from Jabba. Enjoy her." And it is Princess Leia. She of course, she had been strapped to Jabba, probably a foot away from her for however long she was a slave. And she's like, "If you touch me, one of us is gonna die tonight." And then he gives her a blanket and says, "Cover yourself, I'm not going to touch you." He says, sex between 2 that aren't married is immoral. And so is rape. To me, that's fascinating. That tells you something about Boba's personality. That, he is a bounty hunter. He has killed numerous people. But rape and even premarital sex is crossing the line. And so, she sits on his bed and he just sits in a chair, making sure she doesn't pull anything. And then she starts talking, why are you working for them? Why are you working for Jabba? And why are you working for the Empire? And they have this big discussion. Boba says that the Empire is the authority that was lawfully put in place, and the Emperor, lawfully put in his place, is allowed to do what he sees fit, and that the rebellion is the ones who are morally wrong, because they rebelled against the government, and whenever the Emperor struck them down, he was in his right to do that. Boba says he's sorry for all the people who had to die, all the innocents that died, but innocents died during war, and the rebellion shouldn't have started the war. And then she says, well, what about Han? Well, Han used to run Spice, and Boba is against drugs, alcohol, spice. He's against all of that. Another thing I find fascinating. It's almost like Boba Fett's a good Christian boy. And so he hunts Han for that. Well, why is he working for Jabba? Leia says, why are you working for Jabba? He runs spice. Necessity brings allies, Boba responds. For right now, he's working for Jabba, but once the war is over, he expects that the Empire will deal with Jabba in the same way that he's dealing with Han. And so I find that very interesting. Later on, whenever Boba escapes the Sarlacc pit, and yes, he escapes, he doesn't die. That is not the lamest death, because he doesn't die. But he escapes, and when he escapes, it's actually 15 years later, because once someone is in the Sarlacc, they are digested for 1,000 years. And so he gets out 15 years later. And he is a broken man, because he comes out of the pit and sees that the lawful empire that he once served was usurped, and now it's the New Republic. So then he just goes off to being a freelance bounty hunter again. And then he gets a call of where Han Solo is, and so he goes and hunts Han Solo. They have a discussion, and you know, they're both holding each other at gunpoint. It's almost like a Mexican standoff. And they say, one of two things is going to happen. We're both going to pull the trigger and we both die, or we both put down our guns and walk away. And at the end of the story, this is a story called Last One Standing. The majority of what I'm saying is from Last One Standing. It's probably my favorite Star Wars story. We don't see the end of it. Now, obviously, afterwards, Boba and Han both come back, so obviously they both put down their guns. But it's fascinating because Boba said that he would put down his gun if Han put down his gun. Now, Boba does not lie, so we know that he would put down his gun. And Han has a family at this point. And so he wants to get back to his kids. And then that's how the story ends. Like, we don't know. Of course we do know. Another thing that's interesting is, though they wouldn't really have much of a friendship after that, they'd have a mutual respect for each other, but not a friendship. Jaina Solo, Han's daughter, would then go to the Mandalorian, specifically to Boba Fett, because her twin brother, Jason, had crossed to the dark side like Anakin and become Darth Caedus. And so she goes to Boba Fett to train and to learn how to kill her brother. Now, all of this, of course, is legends, but that's because we don't have a whole lot of Boba Fett in the Disney canon right now, and I really wish we could. Like, I weep for the Star Wars Clone Wars arc that we will never get. That is Boba being trained by Cad Bane, and eventually Cad Bane and Boba fight, and then he kills Cad Bane. I wish we had that. I would have rather had that than the Bad Batch, honestly. Now, I love the Bad Batch, but I love Boba more. But yeah, that is Boba Fett. Boba Fett is not just a one-dimensional character. He's either lawful neutral or a chaotic good. He believes in the law, and he believes that the law is moral. And I find that fascinating. So, hope you learned something about Boba Fett, and I hope that you will come to love Boba Fett as much as I do. Thanks so much for listening.